well, which helps. 3,000
Hey, Composing Gloves here, and today we're going to be talking about what is recording. What is recording? Recording is when you take one thing that you want to save for later, and so you find a way to make it so that you can recall it later. So let's say, for example, I've got some audio, and I want to save it for later. Right now I'm recording a tutorial that you need to be able to reproduce on command. I'm recording it. So I have to take my brain waves. Right now I've got all these brain waves, all these neural firings, and they are being translated into, to keep it simple, they're being translated into words that my mouth is speaking. It's called transduction. When you take one thing in one world, one form of energy, and you turn it into a corresponding form of energy. So thought patterns are being turned into corresponding words. And so if I just wanted you to understand me, I would take these words and you would listen to these words, and then you would translate them back into thought patterns, and then you would understand what I'm saying. It gets sort of philosophical. We're going to ignore all the cool ideas there, but it's really cool. So basically, when it gets down to my mouth, I am translating it acoustically into sound pressure levels. It is now actual atmospheric variances moving around in my room, right? And then once it's in this state, I need a way. I can't record that. I can't bring that up on demand. That's just not possible. So what I do is I get a microphone and I say, hey, here's a microphone, and I give it a wire, and this microphone will respond to variances in a corresponding way to the sound pressure levels in the universe around me. And as it moves my microphone, it will send a variable electronic signal down my wire. And as it goes down my wire, it's going to run into something called a USB audio interface. It looks like this. And this is going to translate it, because now that I've got it in the electronic world, I can manipulate it with all manner of electronic tools. And at this point, I could record it. There are ways to record it from here, but we're going to not say that quite yet. We're going to put it through another system. We could record it to tape. And so we couldn't record the electronic signal itself, but the next stage is usually the stage where the recording happens. But we transduce it one more time, and it goes through an audio interface, which translates it into a digital signal. It turns into a bunch of zeros and ones, my digital audio basic series, if you're curious about how that works. And then your computer can see it and it records it, which is what I am doing right now. So it has to go through all these things. And then when you play the video, it's going to replay that audio back to you, and it's going to go from digital to analog, which is something that your computer is doing right now, if you're hearing me at all. And then it hits your speakers, and your speakers move back and forth, causing it to, as they move back and forth, they recreate those sound pressure levels, which your ear hears, and that moves back and forth, and that translates it back into the words and back into the thought patterns. And that is how me right now am getting into your brain. And so it's a pretty cool thing. So that's what recording is. It's the art of taking something and translating it through a series of states, through a series of energies, into one that can be easily reproduced and recognized. Audio, as you can see, is quite a bit more tricky. It hasn't been around super long compared to writing. Writing's really easy. So I have some thought patterns, and I want you to be able to think these same thought patterns later. So what do? I come up with a system in my brain of hand movements that I can use. Then I put a pencil, and I turn these hand movements into the physical world via this pencil onto a piece of paper. And now, by you learning what my hand movements look like, you can optically scan it and have the same thought patterns. That's the goal of writing, right? Is to think whatever the writer was thinking. So if they're telling a story, you can read that story, whatever it is. I know there's a lot more philosophy that goes into it, but as you write it, that's what's going on. So writing is really easy because you could have poor writing and then you could still have the same thought patterns. It more or less means the same thing. It may influence you in other ways. And audio, if you have poor audio, you might not be able to recognize your audio at all. And the reason is recording audio is there's so many levels and layers, and audio is very particular. Things must line up on a timeline the exact same way every single time if you want to hear the same thing. Whereas words, if you want to read the word the, I could write the a million different ways and you could still read the word the. Like, it would still mean the. Here, that's not how it works at all. So that's just our definition right now of what recording is. Maybe you didn't have this in your head before, or you weren't really sure about what this was, but that's what recording is. So recording is when you take something and you are translating it into a state that you can easily recall it later. And then we get into editing, which is where you take that recorded thing and you make further changes to it while it is in that state. So for example, while I am recording, I could make changes at all different levels to affect and augment this process. So I could change, for example, what I'm thinking. So the very thing I record is different. I could change the acoustics in the room so that the way it bounces around the room is different, so that the way my microphone picks it up is different. I could change the microphone picking it up. I could change the wire. I could change the way I handle it when it's in the electronic domain. And once I get into the digital audio workstation, I can augment it all over the map. It gets crazy. I'm not going to be talking about tape in this series. If some of you guys are wondering about like recording to tape, like, it's cool, but it's just not that common and it's not super relevant to this. So that's what recording is. If you have any questions about recording, let me know. Subscribe, support me on Patreon, and have a blessed day. Here, well, I'll talk about distortion in a second. The big deal is this is a big deal because that's super, super different. Like, you might be saying, well, you're taking away half the harmonics. Yeah, but they're in the same series. It's pretty incredible that it can sound so different. Why does it sound like that? Well, the answer lies in basic tuning theory. Now, I'm not gonna get into it. You can look it up.